The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
All right, there are new concerns for FTX in Japan. The FTX Japan is ordered by the regulator there to suspend operations following a withdrawal halt. Emily has more on this to explain. So, Emily, FTX is very much a non-U.S. story in terms of its international operations. So what do we know about FTX outside of the United States?
Yes, so let's just start with this Japan story, because this is actually really big, and I don't think something like this exactly has happened in Japan before vis-a-vis crypto. So basically what's happened is Japan's Financial Services Agency has now ordered FTX's kind of local department to stop operations. And this came out via official announcement. CoinDesk just reported this. My colleague Sandali just reported this. Basically, the regulator is telling FTX Japan to stop the crypto exchange and stop accepting new customers effective immediately. So this is a pretty big deal for Japan. One thing that's important to note here is that FTX was a big player in Japan. I think we have a similar web chart. Yep, right there. I think this is a really important part of the story that maybe is getting overshadowed a little bit in the US. Obviously, this is a big story in the US as well because Sam Bankman-Fried is so famous and he's like a big political donor. And there is FTX US, but this is not a US story. FTX's operations are fundamentally abroad. And this affects FTX's non-US entity. And this is, in Asia specifically, this is where we're going to see a lot of the kind of repercussions of this. You know, if you look at Japan specifically, you can see how important Japan is on that map. This is SimilarWeb data. Now, SimilarWeb needs the important caveat that this is for web traffic. It's not a perfect way to measure geolocation data. But when it comes to crypto, that's one of the best tools that we have because it's very difficult to know where crypto exchanges are operating. But I think we're going to see a real fallout from this, especially across Asian markets where FTX is very prominent.
Definitely. I mean, we just spoke to a U.S. commissioner of the CFTC, but I mean, this is a non-U.S. company. And until fairly recently, FTX was based in Hong Kong. So, you know, what is going in Hong Kong right now?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the bottom line here, and we're just seeing this with Japan. I mean, basically what Japan is doing is they're trying to kind of like protect Japanese assets, and protect Japanese customers. But basically all over the world, this is going to spook regulators. Now, Hong Kong is interesting because that's where FTX was based, and FTX has a big following in Asia specifically. Now, Sam left Hong Kong for various reasons. One was just Hong Kong had very, very stringent COVID requirements, but another was because the regulatory environment in Hong Kong was quite tight. Now, interestingly enough, Hong Kong is now showing signs of a thaw. They're showing signs of opening up, for example, licensed exchanges to retail traders. And Sam Bankman-Fried kind of like acknowledged this and sort of acknowledged that it was a little bit too late because FTX had already left Hong Kong. But I think what the key takeaway here to look at in Asia is, are Asian regulators also going to be spooked by this? And will this lead to a further tightening as they see kind of the kind of damage that these kind of institutions can create?
Well, you mentioned Hong Kong is... Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yeah, of course, we know it as two systems, one country. At least that was the case. So what's the story now with Hong Kong in terms of crypto? And how is it different from mainland China? And is there any effort made by the central government in Beijing to maybe export regulations to Hong Kong, given that they're willing to export other things to Hong Kong?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, Hong Kong, actually, a lot is happening in Hong Kong. A lot is happening in Singapore. This has all been kind of overshadowed by this massive news. But yeah, Hong Kong recently has signaled that they are taking a very different direction in crypto. That's FTX search interest on Baidu. Now, Baidu is a Chinese search engine, but you can sort of see just how like invested sort of Chinese internet users are in this whole drama. Because again, FTX is a big player just in Asia in general, and it has a lot of interest in China. But for Hong Kong specifically, so basically Hong Kong was very tight until recently. The policy statement just came out signaling that Hong Kong wants to start a consultation, basically allowing their licensed exchanges to be open more to retail. Now, this is a big difference because before licensed exchanges were basically limited to professional investors. Now, Lawrence, your question about Hong Kong versus mainland China is a huge one because, as we know, mainland China has some of the strictest controls in the world on crypto, and Hong Kong is taking almost like an opposite stance, or not an opposite stance because they're still going to be strict, but they're also saying we are actually thinking about welcoming retail customers. And I think the reason for this is that Hong Kong just basically needs an economic boost. You know, they lost so much talent due to their COVID restrictions. I think people thought that their crypto regulations were also too strict. So yeah, I mean, this is an example of one country, two systems, because Hong Kong and Beijing definitely have different approaches toward crypto at the current moment.